You will see light in the darkness. You will make some sense of this. And when you've made your secret journey, you will find the love you miss.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to episode 2 of our podcast. I'm Jack. I got Andrew here with me. This is our first real episode. The polls have come in. We've chosen to go with Wildly Unscripted for our title. Let us know in the comments if you like that one. You guys voted on that one. We loved it. Make sure to go ahead and also share this podcast. You know, we don't care much about the likes or the follows or the subs. We care about you spreading the word, spreading our message, and leave us a comment of what you think. Andrew, go ahead, take it away from here.
Yeah, alright. So, to be perfectly honest with you, we have a kind of abstract topic today. Is maybe not the smartest thing for me to do is to decide that we were going to go ahead and do this topic for episode, essentially 1.
Yeah, basically.
You know, maybe not the smartest thing for me to choose, but we're going to set a precedent today, sort of in our discussions, because the important thing in what we're talking about is to talk, to talk on a level where we both understand what it is that we're talking about. And obviously, for the intentions of this, show, people are going to be listening in, so it's important that we all know what we're talking about. And so what I think is important to set a precedent for today is truth. Yeah. We need to discuss what truth is, why it matters, a whole bunch of things like that, what the different kinds of truth are, how truth is viewed, various things.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, and because this is still part of the introduction, I want to remind people, this is a very fluid conversation. We don't really have notes, so fluid. We're going to discuss this now. So, truth. Now, let's go over this. To begin, I will say that truth is a really difficult thing to sort of nail down, to explain why it's important or what truth is. The first thing I will say about truth is why it's important, and I think you'll agree with me on this. If you don't, feel free to jump in. This is a podcast. So when it comes to truth, I will say that the reason why it's so important is because truth is something that we all agree on as sort of being, the level definition. This is what we can go off of, operate all of our conversations on, operate all of our, ethics on. It's what it is. The reason it's difficult is because people don't always agree on what truth is. And so we'll get into that. We'll get into how I think each of us define truth. And that's also, of course, of interest, that is to say who how different people have truth, how they view it, how they come to truth, and what absolute truth is as well. So there's a lot to talk about, but I don't know. Do you have any sort of opening thoughts on truth?
I want to say that truth is very, there's no single definition for truth. Everyone has it in their own words, their own meanings, just because based on, experiences and life experiences, everyone's meaning of truth is going to be different, and not to say that some aren't the same, and there might be like a universal meaning, but at the end of the day, if you were to pinpoint the exact meaning of truth, it's going to be different, just depending on how you were raised, depending on what you believe in, what you see right, what you see wrong. Truth is going to be very very different to people, and I think there's a lot of different meanings out there, and I think a lot of them are correct, but I also think some of them are wrong, which we can talk and look into some of the different meanings of truth. But it also depends on the context of what you're saying. If you're talking about truth in a relationship, it's going to be a little bit different than something like truth in religion. And so that's why everyone's definition can be a little bit different in that sense.
Well, I will say you're right in the sense that this is a really good jumping off point.
Yeah.
There's this whole sort of thing today. Well, people will say, you live your truth or you do my truth.
Mm-hmm.
I will just start off, and immediately this show is going to become controversial when I say that is not true. That's not true at all. Okay, so I said it's not true. What does that mean? Well, absolute truth is what I mean when I say truth. So that's my definition. Now, what is absolute truth? Absolute truth is the truth that is true. If that's not a sort of confusing, non-definition, then I don't know what is. It's the truth that is actually what happened. So truth, in essence, is what happens, right? Truth is, hey, that guy, stole my car. Okay, well, he stole your car. That's true. But maybe he didn't steal your car. Well, then that would be false, right? So true is something that is, verifiable. It happened. It's real. It's whatever. And absolute truth is the truth that is true.
Would you call that more of a fact instead of truth, or would you call that an opinion?
Well, it is a fact.
Because...
I mean, a truth is a fact, yes. I mean, I would think so.
I feel like it depends on, like, what I was saying about the context. Because,
well, here's the thing. The my truth thing, because I think that's sort of what you're talking about. And that's why I think it's a really good jumping off point. The whole sort of my truth ethos that exists is, predicated on I can think whatever I want. I do think whatever I want. What I've experienced is indeed true. And that is true. Obviously, what you've experienced is what you know, and so therefore it's how you view things. But it is an inherently biased thing, which absolute truth is not. Absolute truth is what is indeed real, and your truth is what you perceive to be real. So if you live by your truth, you're not actually living by the standards of an absolute truth.
Okay.
So that's a good distinction to make early on, I think.
So you're saying
what we discuss.
So you're saying absolute truth is going to be more like the fact, and then
it can also,
my truth
by the
is
way,
going to be.
It can also be called objective truth. It's not just it's not also called absolute truth. Two sort of terms for it.
I get that. Yeah. Okay. I remember when I was younger, I was told there's two sides to every story, which means what is true to me might not be true to you, which I think wouldn't fall under the objective or absolute truth category. It would fall under my truth and your truth category. So that's very true, and that's actually that's kind of what I'm talking about. In that obviously what is true for you is true for you. That's your truth in a sense, but it's not actually factual. It's not objective, absolute truth. Now I don't know if I mentioned this, but in episode 1, when I was sort of discussing who I am as a person, because we did that, part of what's really important to me is to, sort of push forward, and find out what the truth is, because otherwise nothing really matters. And I kind of want to get to that, in the sense that, truth is the only thing that really matters, in some sense in this world. So, there's the your truth, but there's the absolute truth. And the reason why absolute truth matters more than anything else is because if you don't understand what an absolute truth is, you can't really sort of go forward. You can't do anything, so to speak, you can't do anything with purpose, without knowing what the absolute truth is, without going forward and sort of telling other people what it is. So finding it out is a very important thing. I feel like I'm saying a lot that doesn't, that I'm not explaining a whole heck of a lot.
but we can
It's a
get
tough
into
topic.
it because I'm curious because I'm saying a lot of things. So if you're curious, if you have questions, like ask me. That's probably the best way for me to sort of respond to these things, because I have these sort of notions about truth.
No, for sure.
It would just be easy for me to
you,
explain if you have questions, or vice versa. If I have a question, something you
I really actually wanted to ask you, would you consider what you're saying, absolute truth and or objective truth, to be the same thing as trust? Because the trust you put into someone, in a way, is truth. If that kind of makes sense. I don't know if you're picking up what I'm putting down.
I suppose I could. I think trust
or are they the same thing? Or like how would you look at trust? How would you differ trust and truth? Yeah, you trust someone. That means you would believe what their word to say is truth, right? So would you consider those the same thing? Because there's different levels of trust with people. Obviously I wouldn't trust everyone with my life, but I would trust that they're telling me, an information that's true, right? So would you consider trust and truth to be, if on a standard level, would you consider them to be roughly the same thing?
They're not the same, I wouldn't say. I think that they work together very well. That is to say, sort of, if you believe sort of that someone will tell you the truth, then you trust them, right? That's kind of what faith is, right? You have a faith that what you believe is true. So I guess trust and faith are kind of the same thing, right? I guess those would be a better thing to say. But in terms of trust, I had some thoughts on it while you were talking. I would say that trust is indeed something that, it has to do with that my truth thing, right? Where it's like, nobody views absolute truth. There's a phrase that I've heard people say, there's my truth, your truth, and like the cold hard truth, and that's the objective truth. And so, even one person gives you something, they give you their truth. It's not the truth, it's their truth. It's a version of the truth. But it's their sort of biased version. It's their perversion, if you will, of the truth. Not that they're giving you anything that they didn't perceive, but, inherently a human perception is flawed. So if a human views something, right, well, here's an interesting sort of thing is, let's just take what I'm saying right now, to anybody listening or to you. It suddenly means something different than what I mean it to mean when it enters into your brain or, a listener's brain. It means something entirely different because it's coming into somebody who has a completely different life experience, a completely different, understanding of what it is that I'm saying than I do. Conveying true understanding to somebody is something that is mind-bogglingly difficult in my approximational understanding. Sure. It's something that I'm very interested in because obviously as a sort of maker of art, so to speak, that's what I deem the purpose of art to be. Certainly it's my purpose. So if I'm making a movie or I'm writing a book or something, which I've been doing, then, imparting understanding that I hold, which is, I guess, my truth in some weird way, is kind of the point of that. And the thing is for me, because of what I said earlier about, objective truth giving you purpose, because it's the truth, right? That's what sort of the legal system intends to operate off of and all of that. That it gives you purpose. I try to line my truth up as often as I can with the absolute truth. That's part of the reason why I'm doing this, so that I can look at what I think and think, well, no, that's wrong, or, well, yeah, that is right. Maybe I'm thinking, maybe my thoughts here are a little too biased,
Interesting.
But yeah.
So you're
I
saying
don't know
you
if I
want
answered your question or not. I feel like
No,
I might have gotten there.
I think you got like yeah. For the most part, it seemed like you answered it. I just wanted to say. So you think you think so you're saying that your truth is you want to base your truth off of facts over your like life experiences and stuff. You don't want to just say, well, I believe in this. You want to say, I believe in this because of this,
Right.
this. I've read this and I know that this is a fact because of this, and this.
Well,
So you want to go ahead.
Okay, sure. I think back to a lot of the things that sort of drive me. And the thing that I would say probably drives me the most above literally anything else is that there's a reason for everything, right? Nothing happened without cause. There is cause and there is effect. So what's interesting to me is how as humans, right, we come to these different understandings of things. We come into these different places. What caused that? What's the reason for that? And so that's really interesting to me. I lost my train of thought. What was your question again? I lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere with that, so when you say it, I'll probably remember.
It sounded good from the start. I was just saying, so you want to base your truth off of facts of what you know, what you've read, what you've done your research on before just saying, I believe in this because whatever. But you want to say, I believe in this because I've read and I know that this, and this happened.
Yeah. I want to base... because, you know, different people have different perceptions of reality, which we're calling their truths, right? It's very interesting to me how they came to get their truths. But because everybody has different truths and there is one absolute truth, objective truth, it's my goal to steer people back to the objective truth, right? From their truths, right? But to do that, I want to understand why they got to where they got. Maybe where they are is actually a very interesting place. But indeed, there is only one truth. There is only one thing that is in fact actually true, because you can't have multiple things be true at the same time, you know, in terms of a single objective. Now, there are complicated things, but I don't think you can have just multiple things be true. That you can't. Here's the thing. Going back to my example from earlier, that man stole my car. Well, he can't have stolen it and also not stolen it. They can't both be true, you know? Now, there can be a complicated thing. Maybe he just took it and he was intending to bring it back, you know, sort of. I mean, that sounds funny, but, like, you know, he did technically steal it. I mean, that's true, right? But he also, in his mind, would have said, no, I didn't steal it. I was going to give it back. You know, it's not mine. I know that. So that's sort of that's the my truth thing. And it's very interesting to understand. And that's a very simple example, you know, on a very sort of underlying nature. I would want to understand it deeper than that. But that's I guess that's sort of my take on it.
I want to ask you real quick. In that scenario, what would you consider to be the absolute truth? You know, you said the guy who stole the vehicle wasn't intending to steal it, or he wasn't intending it to be seen as stolen, but the guy who owns the vehicle said it was stolen. So in that scenario, what would you deem to be the absolute truth? Because, you know, like I said, two different sides to each story. You know, if you pick, oh, he stole it, well, then you're picking one guy's side. If you pick, he was borrowing it, then you're picking the other guy's side. So what would you deem, just in that simple example, to be the truth?
Here's what I would say on that. As humans, we have a predisposition to throw our emotions into things, which makes sense because that's just we're emotive creatures.
I would say all animals, honestly.
There's something interesting about that, yeah. But, you know, obviously, again, it comes back to the emotions, sort of. You ask me, actually, the question that you're asking me is a question that predicates based on emotion. So if I choose this person, then I'm siding with this person. I must like this person more, you know, obviously all of that.
Exactly.
You know, I must trust them more, which I think is what you were asking earlier about, you know, are they the same, truth and trust? No. The absolute truth is something that doesn't take emotion into effect. The absolute truth is something that is completely unbiased. Which is why it's actually not possible for a human to perceive an absolute truth until they've removed themselves emotionally from the situation. The absolute truth in that situation with the guy still in the car is that the guy got into somebody's car and took the car. Did he steal it? Well, that is an emotional question, because obviously the man who thinks that it was taken, or thinks that it was stolen, thinks that it was stolen, but the man who took the car doesn't think so. So that is actually something where you can. There's not so hard of a line of truth on that. There is a hard line when it comes to he took the car. That is something he did. He did that. That is a provable fact. The car is gone, and the owner didn't take it. So the other person took the car. That's true. But as to whether or not he stole it, well, you could, I guess, ask the question, is it his, and did he unlawfully take it? Well, if the answer is yes, then you could say that he did steal it. And that's what the legal system does. Whereas it's like, yeah, the guy might have had, good intentions. Hey, I was going to bring it back. I know it's not mine, all of that. But he did steal a car. So that's an interesting question.
I wanted to bring up, you brought up the legal system. I wanted to bring up the legal system in regards to truth, which if you kind of think about it, the jury system, they go through a very strict, I don't know if I would call it hiring process, but to get on the jury, you have to have no emotional connection to the trial. Right. And I think that it would be a really good kind of foundation for truth as well. You have to emotionally detach or keep away from that trial and what's going on. You have to displace yourself. You can't have any connections to it. You can't choose a side. You have to look at it from both sides. And
right, you have to be emotionally detached.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of it. Another thing I wanted to bring up was, so for that stolen car example, it's a good one to come back on. It's easy to,
I think so. It's very simple.
Dissect. Yeah, I wanted to bring up, when that guy says, or say the owner of the vehicle says, he stole my car. In that scenario, are you trusting his word that he is the owner of the car and his car got stolen? You're trusting him that, in reality, he most likely is the owner, but he could be just a random person saying, hey, I could get a free car. Saying, hey, he stole my car. And in your head, you're thinking, oh, he owns that car. That man stole it. Let's try to get it back. So, I mean, obviously, that's very, 1 in a million. But
yeah, I guess that gets into sort of assumptions and presumptions, which are also very interesting.
Yeah. Which in the moment you wouldn't think about too much. You would probably think you would have that trust for him, that first person, that first sight trust. Every person you see, you usually have a little bit of trust because you have nothing to base them off of.
Yeah, innocent until proven guilty, kind of. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
Well, I would say the problem we've been dealing with, sort of mathematical terms would call it a given, right? We've been dealing with the fact that the owner is a given. He does indeed own the car, so we trust that he owns the car. But, again, you thought in a very abstract way, which I want to compliment you on, because I don't think many people would go there. Yeah, he might not own the car. And if he doesn't own the car, if the given is not true, well, then first we have to trust. We have to go back to what even is true. How do we know something is true?
Which is a whole nother.
And that's a very interesting question to ask. And to be just fully transparent with you, I had an idea on that, but I've forgotten what it was. So maybe I'll remember throughout the course of this conversation. But it was in my mind like a week ago, and now it's not. But I would say that. And here's another new interesting thing that I'm going to be introducing here is that I'm a religious man. I am a man who believes in morals and values and all of that. So I believe that that's where truth comes from. That's how we know truth. Now, I realize a lot of people would disagree. There's going to be more episodes of the podcast. We can go over it. But that's how I determine that I know truth, or that truth can be known, is from the absolute objective truth that is given to us from the creator of truth, so to speak. But to answer your question about how, just sort of the abstract, well, what if what we think is true isn't true? That can be a reality. In fact, I would say it's a huge reality. You sort of, just to use a sort of topical example, I don't know if you've heard of this sort of red pill effect that people are talking about these days, where sort of people get woken up. The left will use the term woke and the right will use, the red pill sort of thing. I'm not condoning any side of the political fence, but I am saying that people, use those terms now in terms of everything I thought is wrong. And so, there's sort of awakenings to things that, you realize either weren't true or are true or whatever. That's a very real thing,
Indeed, yeah.
So, and that again goes back to sort of the my truth thing. It's like your truth is not true. It's true for you, but it may not be true for you tomorrow. But the absolute truth, the objective truth, will always be true. It's just whether or not you know it. It's kind of like, have you ever watched the X-Files before? Ever? Any episode of it?
I don't believe I have. I mean, I've heard of it, obviously, but I can't wrap my mind around a specific episode now.
Okay, so one of the, main, what would you call, one of the main, what I'm blanking on, what they call them, log lines, I guess, for movies, it's like the line on the trailer, or on the poster, Back to the Future, he traveled back in time, something really dumb like that, but
yeah.
One of the main, ideas of the show, The X-Files, there's a poster in the show that says it. It says, I want to believe, that sort of thing. Or it says, the truth is out there. And the show, and I have actual some thoughts on The X-Files. I don't think it's a phenomenal show or anything. But the sort of concept of what The X-Files are in a real life scenario is really cool, because it's seeking the truth in a way. It's, it's like, the truth is out there, let's find the truth. That's what the whole show's based on. And I really like that. Because, the more truth you know, the more accurate you can act out any sort of good in reality. And good, what good is, I mean, maybe that's another podcast topic, but, basically, for as it relates to truth, good is what, acting in the way that sort of pushes things, in a direction that betters the lives of yourself and others, theoretically, right? Benefits the most people. And that, again, could go into ethics and all that, and I just don't want to do that right now. I don't think we should, but...
no, definitely not.
Knowing truth helps you to do that. Knowing the truth about people. Are you lying to me? Are you lying to me for a reason? Is it just because you're a scummy person, or is it because there's a reason why you're lying? So all of those things.
That gets back into the trust issue, yeah.
It does get back into the trust, but I will say, I think that about sums it up.
Yeah, no, I wanted to point out, bringing back the topic to movies and the X-File, when you were mentioning that, I actually came across one of my favorite horror movies is horror movie series is a series called Saw, and the little line at the bottom of the movie or the posters, it says, the truth will set you free, and basically each story is about someone that committed a wronging in life, whether they killed someone or purposefully intended to hurt someone else's reputation. They would be put in a kind of psychotic game, and they would have with other people, of course, that also did something wrong, and they would have to, in a way, express and tell the other people, almost admitting to, hey, what I did was wrong. They have to admit, and I guess that gets into the point, the truth will set you free. So they have to come to terms and realize I killed this man for my own good being, and now I need to, pay my deeds. And I thought that was a good, like, what I just wanted to hear your opinion on, what do you think about the line, "The truth will set you free"?
Yeah, well, I kind of like that. I mean, I've never watched any of the Saw movies. Again, like, I know what they are, but I've never watched them, so that is interesting. The truth will set you free. I think, yeah, I mean, it kind of, when you started talking, reminded me of a novel, classic novel by a Russian author named Dostoevsky. You might have heard of him. People watching
Russian names
might know who he is, yeah. Anyway, he wrote a book called Crime and Punishment. It's not his only famous book, but it's probably the one that I'm most interested in right now. And it's about a guy who commits murder. I've not read the book, by the way. I know the premise. It's about a guy who commits murder, and he doesn't get caught for it, and so his conscience is just riddled with guilt. As far as I understand it, to the point where at the end of the book, he, like, turns himself in, and like, it's a huge relief to him. And so the truth will set you free reminds me of that. The truth is sort of like, people have an inherent disposition, I think, and I could be wrong about this. Again, this is kind of a my truth thing. I don't have facts to back it up, or at least I don't have facts in front of me. But I think people have an inherent sort of disposition to want to move toward the truth. Now, people don't. You can say people don't like hearing the truth, which is something that I've seen a lot in modern society. People shy away from the truth, sort of.
I mean, I admit to it, yeah.
A good example would be, when sort of all these, sort of the Me Too thing, right? When in Hollywood, where all these pedophiles are being exposed. Obviously people didn't want to expose themselves, right? But that's a truth that needs to be exposed because it's horrible and heinous, and the people who've done it, should be, punished, right? That's truth. And truths can be uncomfortable, but, sort of the crime and punishment or Saw argument is the truth will set you free. I think that's actually a very apt phrase. People know when something's off. They know when something's wrong, unless they've always felt like something is wrong and they don't know the difference. Which is another sort of interesting psychological thing. I couldn't explain it if I tried, but it's just because I don't understand it super well. But like, people have an inherent sort of they have a moral law written on their heart. It's what I believe. If you don't believe that, then obviously there's probably another explanation you would buy, or maybe you don't agree. But I would say, people have a moral law written on their heart. They understand right from wrong, so to speak. And so when something is wrong, they know. When something is wrong, they know that something is wrong. And, it feels good when the truth is said. The absolute truth, the objective truth. Because, let's see this. Let's say for these pedophiles or whatever, right? The absolute truth is that they are pedophiles. They are, people of an older age, let's say, creeping on people of a younger age. Or even, I would say creeping, because I think it's, horrible. But, if you want to be super legalistic, super objective, take the emotion out of it, people who are sexually interested in younger people, terrible stuff. But, that is, like, the objective truth there is that they have done something wrong, because it's not right to do that to a child. Now, that's a moral question. I suppose you wouldn't say that that's true or false. I would, but we can discuss that later. I think where I'm going with that is just that there's a a real sort of, people don't like the truth. to that, you know, because the person, the pedophiles, right? These are the people who don't want that truth out there because they know it's wrong, but they want to be right, you know? So they're willing to push it off to the side. They're willing to say, hey, I did it, but nobody needs to know, right? Nobody needs to know, you know. Maybe they're even repentant for it. Maybe it's something in their past, and it's like, okay, but you still did it. It's still an objective truth that you did it. And it may also be an objective truth that you feel sorry for having done it, but you still did it, you know. And nobody's perfect. Everybody has a flaw, you know. We're just using these pedophiles as an example because it's quite an egregious sin. But, you know, everybody has this sort of thing where, you know, I shy away from the truth. Hey, I did something wrong. Somebody calls me on it. I get defensive or, you know, whatever. And that's my reaction to being told the truth. I try very hard not to do that. I don't always succeed, but I do try hard not to do that. But people are, if they don't like the truth, they will run away from it.
This is true.
That's a very interesting thing to talk about as well.
It is, yeah.
I think we've already talked about it, but like, very, very interesting.
Yeah. I wanted to bring up. I don't really want to stick on the Me Too topic or anything like that.
Yeah, I think we've exhausted it for now anyway.
But I just wanted to point out there, bringing back up the trust. I don't know why I keep coming back to it, but in every example,
it's okay.
You know, a lot of the cases were actually falsified. So when someone says, you know, oh, he did do this stuff. Right. And then they come up saying, or another person obviously defends himself, and it comes back as nothing actually happened. You know, people, and you believe the girl at first because, you know, you have that trust, right? And you believe that her word is true over his. But, you know, a lot of the times it's taking that, you know, two sides to each story, really digging into what's going on. And is she doing this just for money and attention, or is she doing this because it actually happened? And it's really hard, especially in this like controversial topic where I don't want to stay on it because, you know, I never want to tell someone that they're wrong, you know, especially over something as big as this. But at the same time, you know, morally, is it okay to trust someone that's saying that without having the full story? You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, but it does make sense. And what I'll say to that is, you know, here's one of the reasons why absolute truth is so friggin' important. The United States law, and I'm not sure about other countries, but I'll just say for the United States because that's where we live. The legal system has the operative, you know, here's how it operates: innocent until proven guilty, right? And the reason for that is exactly what you're saying, because of the trust thing. Yeah, trust is an emotional thing, and the legal system and absolute truth are not emotional things. We attempt to operate on a level where human minds, well, a singular human mind, let's say, cannot operate. That's why juries are made up of unbiased people who don't know the situation and are not connected to the situation, and multiple people as well.
100%.
You know, and they still won't get it perfectly because it's humans. You know, we're all human, but you know, innocent until proven guilty. And the thing is, the absolute truth will win out. So, you know, let's take a situation where a woman did lie. You know, her accuser, you know, is innocent, or, you know, the person she accused is innocent, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And so, in a case like that, you know, usually there will be no evidence to convict, or, you know, something like that. And sort of from there, it goes into a societal issue, and I don't want to jump into that. But, you know, in that case, legalistically, the truth wins out. Now, in a case where, well, there's not enough evidence to convict, but he did do it, we end up in a problem. How do you find that truth? Theoretically, and hopefully, it would be through seriously in-depth research and looking into it and finding these things out. Usually the truth will come to surface, because if something happened, there's evidence of it. There always is. Well, I will say probably like 95 99.5% of the time there probably is evidence of it.
Most, depending on the scenario, yeah, should be.
But yeah, that would be my thought on it. Ultimately, like the thing that I was thinking the whole time that you were talking was innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
And proving is how you find truth. You go after these things. You look for all the various fragments. Theoretically, you should be unbiased. You know, detectives are people who come in from the outside. They work for police departments. They do these different things. Hopefully, they have a team, so it's not just one person. Because again, you know, even just one person can be biased.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, but innocent until proven guilty would be what I would say in a situation like that. Because you're right, the trust thing. It's such a huge deal.
It plays a big role.
In the field of truth, because what can be true? What is true? And what is true is, I guess, whatever that person perceives. Again, the my truth sort of thing.
Right.
Do you trust that or do you not? Well, I trust the evidence. And evidence is, well, it's precisely that, evidence of absolute truth. It's signs say that there is of what the absolute truth is, the objective truth is. So that's why a detective can work. They can go and they can find these things and sort of deem, oh, well, this is what actually happened. And thank God for that, because, you know, if that wasn't the case, right, you know, we would be kind of up a creek without a paddle in terms of finding the absolute 100%. Truth. So, yeah. But very, very good question, I think.
Yeah. No, I think that hits home. Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we really need to go over when it comes to truth that we haven't covered.
I know, yeah, we hit a lot, and like, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You
I was just gonna ask
something
you
more interesting than me.
I was just gonna ask you. So with all that we've talked about and all that we've said and our different kind of views on truth, what would be your, not absolute truth, but your personal definition of truth? And I can give mine to you as well.
Well, you know, after talking and after sort of refiguring out what some of my thoughts were, you know, logically pushing toward that, you know, I started the podcast out with a really flimsy definition. Truth is what is true. No. Like I said, this is a fluid conversation. So, you know, obviously, as we've talked, I've thought about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Truth, I think, at the end of the day, well,
it's a hard
truth,
one, yeah.
Because you have to sort of separate them by which truth is, you know, the true thing. So, a sort of my truth argument is that, you know, there's multiple truths, all of that, you know, and there are multiple truths, but actually the correct word there is perceptions, because they're not true, really. I mean, they're true to you, but they're not true, really, in the sense of the word. They're just perceptions. It's your perception of what happened. So to you, that's what the truth is, but that's not actually the truth. So then to answer your question, what is the definition of truth? Truth is what happened. Truth is what is actually verifiable. It's what I've been referring to this whole time as an objective or absolute truth. It's what I seek as a person. And I would say that that's my definition. I define truth the same way I define objective or absolute truth.
Okay, that's what I was just about to ask you. Is that your definition, or is that the absolute? Okay, so you would value your truth and absolute truth almost to be exactly the same?
Oh no. My truth is not absolute truth. I intend.
No, I mean your personal, like your.
Oh, how what my truth is? Like my truth, my perception.
Yeah, like Andrew's truth. Yeah.
Well, it's my experience. You know, it's whatever I've come to know or think I know. You know, I suppose it's worth reiterating that we're both young people.
Facts.
You know, but what we know, obviously we're talking to each other. We have different life experiences, you know, grew up in different houses and all of that. So Your experience is different from mine. Your perception is different from mine. Your truth, in some sense, is different from mine. That's not to say that the truth is different, because the truth is the same. But my truth, I intend to get as close to the actual truth as I can. But it's just my perception. It's just what I understand, and that's why I can be wrong. That's why anybody can be wrong, because again, I started this podcast with truth is true, because I was trying to remember my thoughts from before, and here we are. I actually have remembered my thoughts to some extent.
48 minutes and you've got a valid definition and argument now.
Yeah. I'll return the question. What would you say your truth is?
So
since you asked it, you must have an answer.
Yeah. I mean, I would say I kind of agree with you. I like to base my truth off of facts, of what is known to be correct, what is proven to be correct, and what is ultimately correct. Mm-hmm. I am a firm believer in two sides to every story. So, if someone says this happened, I want to know why it happened. I don't want to look at it as like a flat sheet of paper. I want to look at it as a globe. I want to be able to see every single angle of what situation actually happened. And that's obviously what a lot of detectives do, what a lot of police do. They can't just, boom, you're at fault. They got to look at it from 360 degrees. And I think I want to base most of my truths off that. Obviously, I've been coming back to the trust. And, I think trust does play a big role in truth. How much I trust that person is how much I'm going to believe their word to be true. And obviously, I would expect the same in return. If someone trusts me a lot, they're going to expect my word to be true. And we stayed a bit. Honestly, I think we stayed the whole night staying away from religion. We didn't really go into religion and truth and stuff like that. But I would also base some of my truths off of my religion. And I think so. And ultimately, my truth is going to be like you. I think I want to base it off the facts, and I want to base it off my life experiences as well. And I think that's what I would call my truth, is what I know and what I know to be true.
I wanted to make a point when you said trust. Actually, I have two things, but I'm going to do this one first. When you said trust, I also thought, it matters how much you trust the person, but also, sort of the evidence and all that. We've discussed that, but we haven't discussed the fact that research is also a thing. You can research things, find out what people have found in the past, and obviously that leads to what is true or what you think is true now.
Good point.
Which, very important to mention. We haven't mentioned research at all, so I thought we should.
No, yeah. Great point, yeah.
And the other thing I was going to say was what you said at first, two sides to every story. I did mention earlier that that's sort of what drives me, actually. That's what really interests me, is how people come to these different conclusions, because, I'll say this. My family's, here, let's touch on religion just a little bit. Not what we think religiously, but just, my experience religiously. I've grown up in a household where there wasn't one unified religious thought. And I know that's not unique, but it wasn't just we are all Protestant Christians or we are all, Hindus. I mean, it was just, it was various thoughts. I mean, there were a lot of unified things, obviously. I will just say that everybody was a Christian in my house, but very different spread of views, let's say. So that being said, there was always a lot of obviously there's reasons why people think different things, different truths, different perceptions, different experiences, and I'm interested in that. I'm interested in going through back, understanding why, because if you understand why, then you can then better help them to understand what you understand. And really, understanding another human and for anybody, so you understanding me or me understanding you, it's a difficult thing, and I mentioned that earlier too, but that is what interests me so much, is imparting understanding, because if I understand something, I would really want to help other people understand what I understand, right?
Yeah.
And I would hope that I could learn to understand what other people understand. So that's sort of the, two sides to every story thing. It's like, yeah, let's go back to the car analogy. Let's bring it back to that. Hey,
Yeah.
dang it, he stole my car. Why did he do that? And I'm curious. I would be curious, and to figure out maybe how I could help this person to not do that, or to not even need to do that, So yeah, I will say that as well. It's very pivotal for me. That's something that is very important to me. It's something that I dwell on, actually. So yeah. But yeah, the very, very good definition, I would say, because, and again, we didn't really get into religion, but so much of it is kind of religious in nature. It's kind of important to go there, in some ways. But truth does exist outside of that realm, I think, to some extent. So what are our truths? Well, I think that we base them on evidence. I think that we base them on,
Facts.
Well, I'll speak for myself, but I think from what you've said, you would agree. Base it on evidence, base it on what we know, base it on what other people know, or claim to know, and what we claim to know, right? What we understand, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And we get as close as we possibly can to what is true. And we dig, and we dig, and we learn new things, sort of calling it back to your interest in learning. You learn new things because it helps you further understand things. It helps you further understand the world. It helps you, in your, it can help you practically, yeah, but that's also just showing a further understanding of the world. I understand how this works. And so that's true, right? Once you understand this, it's like, okay, well, that's true about this world. And so that's, I think that's ultimately how I would base my my understanding of truth. And I think for you, it sounds like you would be the same.
Just about the same, man. Yeah. We drive across the same road. So.
We'll discuss just a little bit, in terms of that's setting a precedent for the show, so that well, for us, I guess, as people, but also for the show, because most people will just be watching it as a show. We're open to correction. We're open to being wrong.
100%.
Because we're people, just as much as anybody is a person. And I would say, that what it is that we, what did you say? What it is that we think is not always correct, and it won't always be correct, but we want to get as close as possible to correct. That's why we're willing to have these conversations. That's why I'm willing to have these conversations, and I assume the same for you.
The same way.
So,
yeah. And if it's not correct, I want to know what is correct so that I can further my knowledge and be able to provide that information for next time when it comes up.
And I'll say that for people in the comments, who have these sort of thoughts, hey, well, this is true, and I know it's true for me, it must be true for everybody else. Well, no, it's not true.
I hate to burst your bubble.
But it could be true, and so I'm willing to discuss it. But there is a truth, and only together will we find the truth. And maybe one of these upcoming podcast episodes next month or the month after that, we can sort of discuss the religious side of things, which I'm very interested in doing, because there's a real, well, first we have to make the argument for why we believe our religion, right? And then from there on out, we can explain sort of why it matters, why that matters in the case of truth, and so on and so forth. So I guess you could consider this to be a part 1 of future discussions. But this is our general thoughts on truth. So yeah, I don't know. Do you think that about covers it?
I think we covered, like you said, this was more of like a broad overlook of what we believe truth to be in, and as we grow and as we learn and kind of get used to talking about this subject, obviously we can go more in depth about it. But I think we covered, like, just the overview of what we define truth as for the most part, and how we see truth function throughout the world, I would say.
Yeah. And there's an awful lot more to talk about than we talked about, but as a general, 100%. I think good. So
yeah.
Yeah, well, anyway, I guess then that about wraps up this episode. So, what I'll just say is that this is episode 2. We are going to be doing another episode this month, a bonus episode. It's not episode 3, but we'll be doing wow, if I can talk. We'll be doing an interview with a good friend of mine, who, again, I have very interesting conversations with. So it'll be fun, and you guys have never really talked, so it'll be fun to have that as well.
I'm excited. I look forward to it.
Yeah. So I'll remind you again what we said at the beginning of the episode. If you would like to share the podcast, that would really help us. Because we're still discussing it, but I don't think we're really going to be doing so much advertising. So
no.
Yeah, if you want to share, that will help us reach more people. We're interested in having discussions, and we want our community to remain amongst people who are interested in having discussions. So share it if you liked it, if you like the ideas, if you think that people who would be, if you can think of people who'd be interested in jumping in and having discussions with us, or sharing their thoughts in the comments or whatever. Sharing, probably the best thing to do. If you liked it, go ahead and like it. If you do want to stay up to date, we don't have any official sort of place that we're putting out, news on it, but you can subscribe and maybe you'll see stuff. Yeah, I guess that's about it for now. So,
dude, yeah,
did you have anything you wanted to end on?
I want to say, if you made it this far, well, props to you. Congrats. I mean, I felt like we were pretty entertaining, so I love this conversation. I think this definitely sets the bar for where we're going. I feel like we're heading in a very great direction.
I'll
especially
also
for our
say,
first.
I think that, like I said in the beginning, this is a very abstract topic that we did this time. So next time, I think we'll probably do something that's a little bit more, we can just have a lot of discussions with. A little more open. There's some abstract topics that I would like to discuss, but we probably won't do one next time. So we'll do something a little bit more tangible.
I agree.
But in any case, this is episode 2. So I don't know. I kind of cut you off. If you want to say anything else.
I was going to say thank you guys for sticking around with us.
Like
you said, we're going to be doing a little guest feature coming up soon, so that should be fun. I don't know. We don't have a topic for that one yet, do we?
I don't know if we're going to do a topic. Well, here's the thing. For the guest episodes, I'm figuring pretty much the topic is just the guests. The fact that
the guest themselves,
we can have a conversation. We can talk to these people, Most of the people who I've approached have very interesting things about them, so we'll talk about them, obviously. And if they're not regulars, then we'll sort of, it'll be fun to talk about what's going on with them, who they are, their thoughts on things. We'll bring on a lot of different people, a lot of different places people have been.
Oh, sounds great, dude. I can't wait. It's gonna be fun.
But anyway, I think we've droned this ending on for long enough. So thank you guys for watching episode 2. And we'll be back with episode 3 in October. And the bonus episode this month. So, yeah. Peace.